if I were to create a mixtape, and it'd have to be an old school cassette because that's probably the last time that I made one, for my guest and her music of life, it would probably open with the Undertones Family Entertainment with the classic line, "Got to keep it in the family." Now, I mentioned family not so much to talk endlessly about the quite rare band structure of my guest band, Bad Mary, but to segue more sort of clumsily into some of the questions that that I've got for myself about where friendships and family relationships sort of fit into today's lifestyle, and the sort of things that I've been thinking about are: do we make friends the same way that we used to? We have probably the biggest number of generations alive at the same time, and how do we kind of bridge those generations? Do we make enough time for relationships? Do we have friends for life now? Do we appreciate our friends and family? How do they impact our well-being? And also, I guess with the impact of tech as well, what role do virtual friendships play, in our lives as well now? So yeah, this is the sort of shit that I think about anyway. But it's kind of quite fun. Well, it keeps me amused anyway. So anyway, it's my honour to welcome Amanda Mack to the show. Amanda, welcome, and thanks so much for giving up your time to come on and humour me about all this sort of stuff.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. So I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I got into sort of thinking about this world is so kind of volatile and ever changing, and I noticed, like, with this thing with kind of friendships and relationships, how I've kind of handled them, and maybe not handled them so well, and things like that. And that's just sort of one element of things that are really, I think, changing, or possibly a kind of something that has changed because of the way that we're living our lives now. And there's a whole load of other things, like we were just saying before we started. Things like kind of curiosity being so much more important these days. And yeah, I just think it's the sort of things that we need now, to get through life, is it just feels very, very different. I don't know how you sort of feel about these things, how you notice it in your life, whether it's through music or just kind of life in general.
I think communication for me I think for everybody has
Mm,
definitely changed because now it's easier to connect with people in a second, no matter where you are in the world.
totally.
Whereas
Yeah.
maybe when I first had a cell phone, when I was in like junior high school, and we were still texting with like you had to hit seven like four times in order to get the right letter, it was a little bit harder.
It
But
was a bit.
we made it work.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes, and I think we were touching on this a little bit before we started. I like talking to you already, so I'm glad we hit record because
Yeah,
I feel
well,
like it kind
absolutely.
of. Um, but it's easier to maybe cast a wider net of people
Mm,
that you're always talking with, and I love speaking with new people, which is why I was so
yeah.
excited to speak with you today and share perspective. Um, but sometimes it is hard to maybe maintain those lifelong
Yeah.
uh, friendships because there's so many new avenues and new doors and just different connections to make, that I think
Mm,
with all of that, it's important to try to maintain, like, if you've had friends from, like, I have a core group of friends that I've had since collectively maybe high school, and
yeah.
these people, we have such a relationship in a group together where I might not speak to or hear from one of them for like a year, but
Mm,
when we pick up the phone or speak again, it's like we never, there was no distance or no time.
yeah.
And I think if you have people in your life like that, hold on to them, maintain that, because they love you for who you are. They respect what you're working on, what you're doing, and time isn't something that's a qualifier. It's, oh, I haven't spoken
Mm,
to you in 2 weeks, so we're not friends anymore.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, you've given your friends the grace and the patience and the respect to go live their life and do and
Yeah.
succeed how they can and want to. But when you come back and have a conversation, you're there for them, and you've held that space
Yeah.
to kind of pick up where you left off. So
Yeah. Totally. It's
you know.
interesting. I totally hear you with that, and I mean, just on that. I mean, in the last, I think it was probably, was it? It wasn't that long, maybe 2 years ago. That I kind of got back in touch with basically like my best friend from school. We used to. I mean, we kind of grew up like musically. Yeah, I mean, we were inseparable. When we first became friends, which was probably at the age of, I'm going to say about 14, maybe something like that. And we had lots of very similar musical tastes. I mean, it's probably music that brought one of the things that brought us together. And we lost touch. I was probably, I'm going to say about 21, and we lost touch, and we recently, kind of found each other again. And it was a completely random introduction. It was from our old like gym teacher, PE, physical education teacher from back at school, where we just had some common ground. We just sort of found each other, and it was like you said, when you just pick up where you left off. This was like this. I'm talking like 30, over 30 years, and it was
Yeah,
just like that straight away, like
so
we'd
those
never
are
never left.
that's beautiful. That's
It was,
absolutely beautiful.
yeah, and
And it's, I don't know. I love that. I absolutely love that because I do have people that you talk to every day. You might be working more with, especially like the band. I talk to them every day.
yeah,
They're my
yeah,
family. So
yeah,
that's my core. But there are
mm,
people that I've known throughout my whole life that
yeah,
maybe knew me when I was super little that I don't speak to or get to speak with every day. But when we do get to, it's like I cherish those moments, and I know that I might get
mm,
little moments with them throughout time, and it makes me
yeah,
appreciate those moments more. So it's
yeah, for sure.
you we live in an age, I feel like, where it's so easy, and I'm incredibly guilty of this, and I have to be conscious of this, of just spreading ourselves way too thin, because there's
Yeah,
so much you can do, so much out there, so much, I hate to always call it content, but so much content to
totally.
consume,
No,
so
you're right.
much, everything everywhere all the
Yeah,
time. And to take a step back sometimes and breathe and appreciate the people around you. I have to
yeah,
remind myself that
yeah,
constantly, because I'm very like, keep moving forward, keep pushing forward. What's
mm,
the next thing to achieve? What's the next goal? What's the next project? And in doing all those things, you meet incredible people, but you also
yeah,
need to kind of stop, take a look back, appreciate all those things, because you
yeah.
can accomplish and create a lot. And if you're continuously looking to the next or the bigger or the better, it's like, no, look at what's around for a minute.
What's
Look at
around?
what's around. Look at the people with you. Look at the group that has gotten you and us and everyone collectively to this point. And it's all, um, everything's like all a tapestry, to where it
Mm,
can come full circle sometimes, like you just said. You had this
yeah,
friend that you were close with when you were 14, and
yeah,
then your lives went separate for no reason other than life,
yeah, yeah.
because that happens to
That
everyone. And
happens.
it's something that I think you can, like, I have so many friendships when I look back, that's like I was so close to that person 10 years ago.
Mm,
I don't know exactly what they're doing now,
yeah,
but in my heart, I'm like, I still hope they're doing well. And I hope that they're on the other side, maybe sending the positive energy this way too. But it's impossible to keep up with everyone all the time.
mm,
And I think it's easy to feel guilty about that too. So you need to
oh,
like give
absolutely.
yourself grace with that, and just realize, like,
Yeah,
no, if you're meant to cross paths again, if you're meant to, it can and will happen. And
yeah,
I was speaking to somebody recently where I was like, my best friend in life, like when we were in junior high together and then graduated and ended up going to different high schools. And I don't think we spoke for like 2 years. And it
yeah,
wasn't a anything like you did anything wrong. It wasn't I was mad at you. It was just we, as people, and I think this is why we get along so well and why we always
mm,
kind of return and come back. It's like okay, I'm doing my thing. Okay, I'm doing my thing. Great,
yeah,
have fun. And
yeah,
then when
yeah.
it kind of came full circle and we came back, it wasn't like it didn't feel like one of those pulling teeth, like, okay, well, how have you been? How's mom? How's that? Which is a slow roll into getting back to that
Those
touch.
kind of
It was
awkward sort of moments, and
Yeah, it just like
yeah,
picked right back up. And when I've told other people about this, they're like, hang on to those people, because that can be rare. But if you find those people that get you and really respect you, they will be there, and it will come full circle, and you do connect again at other points.
yeah.
So keep that faith.
Do you know there's another just as you were talking about, there's another, like, you know, you have some sort of profound moments. I remember it was just before COVID, and in fact it was the year before COVID, so it was like kind of January 2019. And like I live in London, and I was born in the in the north of England, and my parents still live there, but they've both died now. But in 2019, my mum had a basically had a serious fall at home, and like my dad was with her, and it was he didn't know what to do. You know, they were there. They were there for hours, 24 hours, sort of on their own, and couldn't get to a phone. Anyway, so when I got up there, my dad's brother came along, and my dad and his brother had been sort of they used to get, when I was a kid, they were tight. They were really tight, you know, got on really well, and then there was a bit of a falling out probably about 15 years ago, and they never properly, they'd started to repair it, but it wasn't fully repaired, but it was getting there. And I remember I was there with the paramedics and things like that, and then he walked through the door because the paramedics had found his phone number, and he walked through the door. And he was quite a, you know, tall guy, probably sort of 6'1", 6'1", and he walked through the door. But even before he'd come through, and I hadn't seen him for a long time, and I've not, that's a separate thing that I wish I'd kept in touch with him more. But when he walked through the door, I felt, in fact, before he walked through the door, I felt his presence. He was just that person that had that kind of gravitas and such presence that, and when he came through, it was just like, okay, it's going to be okay. You know, just and it's amazing, isn't it, how people can just project that
The energy.
gravitas, that energy. It was just really amazing, and it was that was kind of like a profound effect for me. And I thought, yeah, do you know what? You need to really, you know, make sure that you keep in better touch with your family, you know, and sort of close friends. You know.
This is this is interesting, and this is something I don't really often talk about in interviews and whatnot. So
Mm,
I appreciate that this is different. But
yeah.
my mother passed away in 2021. Um, and it was kind of, without going into the whole
Yeah.
all of it. She had some prior to COVID, she had suffered a very bad stroke
Mm,
that she had started to rehabilitate from. Now, I live in New York. She lived in Florida. So the
mm,
distance with that, you know, I was trying to go back and forth as much as I could.
yeah.
But then COVID hit, and she
Yeah.
was kind of on an upswing from that, in the middle between there. And this was right before our 2019 tour to Japan.
To Japan. Yeah.
Maybe the week before we left, I got the call from
Wow.
someone down there. She had been also diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Oh, wow.
And it was a balance of like, okay, what is the timeline? Do I need to be here? I'm like, this has been in works for like a while now. So it's okay. We
Yeah.
have to fly, go here for work. I'm now in another country. What's
Yeah.
going on in the States? And so I come back and try to get everything together and figure out, okay, how do I help manage the situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that also, it was difficult. Because there was somebody else in the picture that kind of had the reins a bit. So
Yeah.
I'm an only child,
Understood. Me too.
and
Yeah.
we all know from the band. My dad is our drummer.
Yeah.
So in
Yes.
the band,
Yeah.
my dad is our drummer.
Yeah.
So I see him all the time.
All the
He's
time.
in New
Yeah.
York. They had been, my parents had gotten divorced prior a while back. So there was
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
some kind of like and my what I consider my family throughout my life has kind of been this rolling snowball of kind of the people that I said, of these people have always been here. We might not speak for years, but we connect. So I have a lot of like friends as chosen family,
Yeah.
and friends' parents who've adopted me along the way and all this.
Mm,
Because
mm.
being an only child, that also happens, where people are
Absolutely
like,
right.
"You have
I
no
totally get it.
siblings? Okay, come here. I have kids. These are your
Yeah.
brothers now. This is your sister." Hi, Tanya. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it was difficult. It was very difficult trying to figure out my function, my place in all of this, what family
Mm,
is, what family means.
yeah.
Mike and I are married in the band
Mm,
also. So like
mm,
that's why I keep looking at the band in my head, like that's my core. That's what these are my that's my family. And I think that's why we've been able to keep it going with the energy for how we've had, and where our creative energy gets poured into is that's our outlet, that's our core, that's our family.
mm.
So going back to my mom, and kind of, I feel like we could probably talk for a long time, because it sounds like a lot happened during COVID for
It
you.
did. Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Same over here. And I know
Yeah.
a lot of people that lost one of my best friends. When I was in Florida with my mother, I got a text message that his father passed away. So
Mm,
I'm in Florida with my mom after, this is in 20, I think this is in 2021 at this point now, where
21.
I was
Yeah.
back in and was with her, and she was bedridden, like at home.
Mm,
And that day I watched her have a seizure
wow.
and get
Oh my God.
taken to the hospital, and then get a text from my other friend, my father just passed away, because he had a heart surgery that went terribly
God.
wrong. Um,
Ooh.
so I will bring this back to a point of levity, but this is just stuff that I don't really bring up, and
Yeah.
doesn't get the airtime, but it's
Mm,
why we do the music. So to bring it back to a
yeah.
point that you mentioned earlier before we even started recording, it is why I try so hard to stay in touch with family now. It's why I've
Yeah.
tried in the last year to really like remember to reach out to my friends, remember to reach out to the people that you love, tell them you love them. It
Yeah.
might not have to be every day, or it could be every day for 5 seconds, and don't feel like
Mm,
you need to talk for an hour, but just check in with those that you love, give people hugs, and
yeah.
do what makes you happy. And for
Absolutely.
her, you know, she was my biggest cheerleader my whole life.
Mm,
And there are days where I wake up and maybe I don't feel like my voice is in the right place, or maybe I don't have the energy to
mm,
step out on stage, or I think I don't, but I take a deep breath and I assess everything around me, and I'm like, this is what it's all about.
yeah.
This is what it's all about. This was the goal. This was the plan. And this is a way to honor her and me
Absolutely.
and my family and everybody I've talked to along the way that has gotten me and us to this point in time. Um, so when I look at life, and it's a balance, and kind of like I brought it back to, I got the phone call that my mom had Parkinson's, and the same day that it was like, hey, we're about to take a plane to your first international tour.
Yeah. No, it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Life happens all the time in every aspect. So it's when something is happy, it doesn't mean that everything is happy. When something is sad, it doesn't mean that everything is sad. And you kind of have
Mm,
to respect all of it
yeah.
and move forward the best that you can with the people that are there
Yeah.
and around you, and realize that they may also not be there all the time, and that's not their fault, and that's not your fault. It's
Yeah. It's yeah, it's fun, like, when these things like what you said, you have this, you know, this tour of Japan, which is an amazing thing to do, and it's exciting, and it's something that you've wanted, and then so that on the one hand, you've been able to create that. That's something that you've been able to do. You've done that. And then there's something on the complete opposite that is so out of your control that, puts you in this huge dilemma, and just basically kind of mind fuck about, okay, well, shit,
yeah.
what do we do? And it's I don't know about, I don't know how that has kind of affected you in terms of your. I mean, I suppose I've become a little bit more. I don't know if spiritual is the right word, but it's made me kind of realize that things happen, and they you know, that like those things that are out of your control, and that you I wouldn't say that they happen for a reason, but they do happen to you, and it's almost something so intangible that you just have to, you know, kind of roll with it and do your best in that situation, and whatever that looks like for you is how you handle it, and nobody can tell you what to do, you know, and nobody should judge you for what you do. You do the thing that feels right for you. I remember some other things that were happening with my mum, and then subsequently with my dad. Yeah, so there is a big other story as well. And I remember thinking that, do you know, there's no right or wrong answer here, because I was trying to find an answer, and there wasn't really one. There's never something. You know, just go with your instincts.
I read something recently, and it kind of helped put some things in perspective, because it's like you, as an artist or as anybody that creates anything, or you want to have control over it. You know, you're like, this is my vision, and I want.
Mm,
But sometimes things happen, and it makes it better that you didn't plan, or that something kind of
mm,
happened accidentally or whatnot in the process there. But when it comes to like all aspects of life, or like say you release something and it didn't do exactly what you wanted it to do at the
yeah.
time, but then has like life later on. It was an analogy of sitting, and eating a piece of chocolate, and a
Mm,
dog is sitting at your feet looking like, I really want that chocolate. Please
yeah.
give me that chocolate. And I can't give this to you because it's going to make you sick. They don't know that. And you can't explain
Yeah.
that to
Yeah. Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So it's this like, they look at you like, this is not fair. Why can't I have it? And when things happen in life like that, it's like, okay, maybe because I'm not a very religious person, but
No.
I,
No.
I
Yeah.
I feel that same way. Like I feel like things are bigger than me. I
Yes.
think there's
Yes.
there's
Absolutely.
something, and it's like this is either the universe's way of telling me like, you are either not ready for that right now, or hey, there's another door for you. So you think you want this, but no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, and I'm not being unfair. This isn't good for you. Go that way. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a way to breathe and let go of, if
Mm,
there's stuff that you're like, no, I got to have it this way.
yeah. Yeah.
Maybe take a little ease on that, and a
Yeah.
breath, and see how it could be uh better and different.
Just just actually sort of thinking about um I mentioned instinct, and you know, this sort of thing of gut instinct. I mean, what how do you use your instinct? What sort of role does it play in your life?
Oh, I am very introspective. I will say that. Like
Mm,
I have a constant kind of like chatter up in
mm,
my head. So I'll like get a feeling in my gut, and then my brain starts going of all like, okay, here's the path that you kind of see ahead, but here's all the little, if this happens, then this. And if this
mm,
happens, then this. So it's kind of coming up with all of the like, okay, here's the backup or the save, the fail save to that
yeah.
situation. So it's like, it starts to branch off into all the different
Oh my
possibilities.
God, yes, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
you know so like I'll be like, okay, here's this one thing, but then I'll see one thing and it turns into 10 things. So I'm like,
10 things.
okay, so it's either trying to like quiet it down a little and focus on the one thing, or be like, okay, well, these 10 things just popped up, maybe number 6 over here is actually the right way. you know but I will sometimes just get like gut feelings in a moment
Yeah.
and be like, nope, not doing that. And
Yes, yes.
it's not a bad thing to listen to.
I sometimes have yeah, this some feelings where I need to kind of analyze things, and you know, sort of work things. Okay, well, what, like you're saying, you know, these different avenues. Well, what if this? Then that might happen, and that, and you try to look at these possibilities, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, stop it! You know, come on, just stop, and I've definitely got better at it as I've got older, and to use my instincts more, because quite, I mean, honestly, I mean, it's I don't know if it's quite often it feels like it's right, but even if it's not right, you quite often can adapt to whatever that outcome is, can't you? And you know, we
Mhm.
are we are kind of adaptable humans, you know, in lots
I
of ways.
think absolutely. And I think the biggest thing for me is if to distinguish between a gut feeling and a strong emotion,
True. Yeah.
because sometimes if I find that I'm like in an emotional state about something, I
Mm,
will think about it a lot in that state, but I've made a deal with myself, and this is something that has happened as I've gotten older too.
mm,
I don't make any decisions
mm.
in that state, so I might be like, okay, this is a different emotion, so it's bringing up different thoughts. I'm going to entertain those thoughts because they're valid,
Yeah.
but a thought is also not a fact. It's like that's that
True.
whole like feeling not
It's
fact.
yeah.
So it's like, okay, live in this space a bit, but I don't make any like big decisions about anything if I feel like I'm not like in the right mental state for it. I think that's a
Yeah.
big help because there are a lot of big decisions that can come out or can happen when you're
Come out.
feeling like if you're really mad about something, it's like, I'm never gonna do this again. I'm not gonna. And then you've made that call and decision in that state. That's not really you. That's you
Yeah.
in a heightened state. So
Hindsight.
it
State.
you got to give yourself that respect too of experiencing those emotions. But it's like that's not where I make my choices.
I mean, it's yeah, you're right. When you add those emotions into those emotional states into the mix, when your brain is already, it's kind of like responses based on prediction, isn't it, of what's kind of previous experiences. So if you come into a situation and you've experienced it before, your brain will tell you how you feel about it or how to react. So you can get you kind of this naughty brain telling you to do things, but it's just trying to kind of protect you,
Yeah.
because it's the only way that it knows based on sort of past experiences. It's not that good at predicting, is it? It's a weird thing, but it's hard to tell yourself when you're in those sort of situations.
That's a really cool perspective of like, yeah, it's good at relaying stuff on past stuff, but it's like that past stuff isn't the future. That's a
Isn't the
totally
future?
different scenario. So don't turn
Yeah.
it into a oh, I like that.
Yeah, I know. So that's like going back to when you were a kid,
Mm.
kind of growing up. I mean, what were your that you remember as being your big sort of formative influences, things that either people, environments, whatever that kind of shaped who you are now.
Well, so as we know, my dad is in our band. My dad is
Mm,
our drummer. So
yeah,
right out the gate, when I was born, I haven't seen a picture, but I've been told this. The story is that I came home from the hospital in the onesie of the band that he was in at the time. And
magnificent.
they're called Pipe Dreams. And if you watch the Are You with the Band video, he's wearing a Pipe Dreams shirt. So when you see
Oh,
him
amazing.
in the back, he's in his like original band shirt of like, and he was in bands before that, but that's the first band I knew him in because that's when I was born. He was in
You
Pipe
didn't stand a
Dreams.
chance, did you?
No. No. So my dad was that, and then my grandmother, his mom, was a big band singer. So there are
Oh,
pictures of
wow.
him playing the drums with her leading like a big band
Oh,
orchestra of
amazing.
my grandfather, who he passed way before I was born. He passed when my
Mm,
dad was 17. But he played guitar. And the story about him was he didn't play an instrument, but when he met my grandma, he was like, oh, I better learn how to play something because I need to be accepted into this family.
oh,
So that
wow.
was like everyone in my dad's family played. And he shares this photo. I think it's like every year on either his uncle's birthday or some family day of he's
Brilliant.
playing the brushes when he's like 4 and his 2 uncles are on either side of him because they were like, okay, we need someone for percussion. Billy's got good rhythm. Here's some brushes. And like that's
Oh,
how he
fantastic.
got into it. So when I was little, that was always around. Music was always playing. Like it was just always on in the house and
Yeah,
all different styles because I lived in a multi-generational house then. I lived with my mother's mother, both my parents, and my grandma would listen to like Frank Sinatra and Tony
yeah,
Bennett and all like the Rat Pack stuff. And my dad was
yeah,
playing um like Cream and like the Cars and like
yeah,
a lot of different. And then my mom was into like Michael McDonald and like the
yeah.
pop at the at the time.
More of the pop sort of
Um,
stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. And when I was 3, that's when I went to see my first movie, which was The Little Mermaid.
yeah.
And my aunt, my dad's sister, who throughout her life, she passed away a couple of years ago. Throughout her life, she was a professional oboe player. She played in the Maryland Symphony. She taught, and she was, I think it may have changed now, but at that time, before I was born, she was stationed in Italy with my uncle. He was in the Navy band, and
Mm.
she was the first civilian to ever be recorded in a naval band recording.
Mm.
So I was out in the backyard, and like I'd seen The Little Mermaid, I don't like 100 times at that point, because that was like my like little kid. I'm gonna watch this movie 4 times a day, every day. We're not gonna watch anything else
Yes.
for a year. Sorry, guys, buckle in. I hope you like it. Um, and I was, I guess, singing along with that outside, and my
Yeah.
aunt heard me, and she was like, "She's singing it right. She's on pitch." So I was like, maybe about, I don't know if I was full on 3, but I was like 2,
Mm.
3 years old. So she was like, "You
Mm.
want to do something with that?" So I was immediately kind of like, it was fostered. My
Yeah,
dad
yeah.
would sing to me. I was kind of encouraged to do chorus because that was really the only option at
Mm.
the time, like in schools and stuff. And my grandma was involved in the church, so I got shuffled into the choir a little bit. And not that,
Yeah,
again, I'm
yeah.
overly religious, but that's where you went. And they're like, "Okay,
That's
we
where you
need an
went.
alto harmony. Who can kind of do?" Okay, I guess so. So you learned harmony. You learned how to sing in a group. You learned how to pick out the different parts with the giant
Yeah.
freaking organ and the um, and then from there, when I got old enough, my dad was still in pipe dreams, and
Mm.
the vocalist, Gene McCormick, who was my first piano teacher, because we had
Mm.
like a stand-up piano that I think someone had salvaged from somewhere that like we brought into the
Mm.
house. So like
Yeah.
any instrument, like we'd just be like, "Oh, you're getting rid of that? Okay." So we had it in the house, and now we had a piano. So she would come over and try to teach me how to play or do singing lessons, but I would get in trouble all the time because I would get distracted, and then I would play the song, but she would notice that I wasn't looking at the music or my hands. I'm like, "Well, I'm playing it right." "Yes, but you're not reading the music." I'm like, "But I heard it. So this is right." Right. So I learned
Right.
everything by ear. And I would
Right.
I would get
Okay.
in a lot of trouble with that as a kid because I'm like,
Oh
"What?"
god.
It's
Yeah.
but through her, I got involved in a musical theater program.
Mm.
Um and that brought me into kind of learning how to be more social. So I kind
Mm.
of I still love theater. I haven't done theater in a while because the band definitely took over creatively, um, which I love because that's something that we're creating and putting ourselves into. But
Mm.
I look at theater and my experience in musical theater throughout school as like that's an artistic group sport. So that kind of teaches you how to act with a team. That teaches you how
Yeah.
to create something together as a group. And that was the first time my dad would be playing drums in the pit
Mm.
while I would be on the stage. So that was the first time with
Right.
us working together. So I've worked with him. I think my first show that I was in that he played, I was 12.
Wow. Okay.
So I've been working on playing with him my whole life, and like
Yeah.
I
Got you.
know his drumming. I know how his rhythms are and stuff. And I think that's why
Yeah.
I love playing with him because that's when I hear drums, like I hear his in my head, and that's been my whole entire life.
Wow.
Um, but
Amazing.
it went from musical theater to rock musicals. So like the first show I ever did was The Who's Tommy.
Mm.
I was 11.
Mm.
And growing up listening to the music that my dad would play in the house, to be like, okay, he's listening to The Who. We're listening to a lot of Beatles, a lot of like classic rock. And to that be the first kind of performance experience, it's like this. I don't know another rock opera that is quite that,
Yeah. Quite like that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for that to be my first introduction to, hey, you're on stage, kid, was like, I want more of this. This
Mm.
is wild. So I've been in that show 2 more times. I've been lucky enough to play Mrs. Walker. Um, it was I absolutely love that. But for me, we do we talk about it in the band, like we have a lot of nerdy influences
Yeah.
with stuff. So like Mike is very video game music. He brings that up all the
Okay.
time, how video game music has been such an influence on like his songwriting. For
Yeah.
me, my nerdy side is the musical theater stuff. I love stuff that
Wow.
tells a story. I love
Mm.
I was very lucky to do this, but the show Hedwig and the Angry Inch, if you're familiar with
Mm.
that
Mm.
at all, was like a formative piece for me. And I think I
Yeah.
still have the VHS tape that I stole from one of my friends, who's one of those friends that I speak to, and we click
You click.
constantly. But he
Yeah.
brought it over to my house in um think it was like senior year of high school or something. And that's when everyone is going through, they're like, I'm 16, 17, I'm figuring myself out. I was into like a lot of also like emo, or what's now, I don't know if I realized it at the time, but it's like stuff that was considered like emo
Yeah,
music that you're
emo.
listening to, like, and he brought that over, and I remember us all watching it in my basement. It's a VHS tape that I think was like recorded from, when it was on somewhere, and I watched it almost every day. So that became my high school Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid,
If
yeah.
that makes any sense.
Yeah,
If that makes
four
any
times a
sense.
day, totally, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I always I didn't, and I talk about Hedwig a lot, but I don't think I realized until like 4 or 5 albums later, when I got to then perform as Yitzhak and Hedwig on stage, how
Mm,
much that piece and that music had an influence on everything that I then wanted to create. It was when I
fascinating.
got to perform in it and I look back and be like, oh, wait a minute, to the point where like uh, uh, the life I live is like the band is my family,
Mm.
and we go on the road and we're a little engine that just kind of keeps pushing forward. And we have a concept space rock punk album that has like a full storyline and
Yeah,
everything.
with the storyline, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so for me that's like, I love things that tell a story, even if it's an individual song that
Mm.
might not have a set, this is what it's about, or this is the clear story. I need to know what I'm singing about when I'm singing it. Like, it's very important to me that the words aren't just words to a pretty tune over something. It's like, no, what are you singing about?
Do you know, it's I'll maybe just sort of come back to the sort of the musical or piece of music that sort of changed my life. But just on that piece about the storytelling, what I really like, and I guess I've not say had to do it, but because of this podcast and some of the writing that I'm doing, I listen to a lot more music than I probably or maybe wouldn't have chosen to listen to. I mean, my background was sort of punk rock. That was my thing. But I listened to a lot of different stuff, much more varied stuff than ever before in my life. And what I really like is listening, and it's kind of counter to what a lot of the industry is pushing us towards, which is single songs on playlists and stuff like that. But I love listening to an album just all the way through and spending the time listening to it. And I appreciate you have to have time to do that, but to listen to it all the way through, for that story to come through about you know, how there's a reason why you put, tracks 1 to 10 or 1 to 12 or whatever in a certain order. You don't just sort of throw it together. And,
And that
listening to it
takes
and
time. I will tell you, sometimes
I
arranging it and everything, it's like, oh, yeah,
I
that's
bet that's
yeah.
a job in itself. Yeah, because you say, like you say, if that's if that's your kind of passion about, telling a story, you want it to feel right. And, from the 1 to 10 or 1 to 6, we do an EP or whatever, but it says, so you want it to say something. And however people interpret that is their call almost. But
Exactly.
there's a
And
story to be
sometimes when
told,
I'm
and I love
singing the
listening to that.
same song in a different day, and I've said this about some of our music, I'm like, that meant this to me today. But
Yeah,
I use it as a way to like, performing and writing and all that is like therapy. So it's
yeah,
like, okay, no,
yeah.
what lyrics do we want to say? Because I'm gonna have to sing it 100 times. So what
Mm,
what is it that I'm comfortable saying over and
mm,
over and over again? And then in certain nights, like depending on how that day went, we have some songs that I'm like, no, I want to sing this song tonight because I'm mad. And then another day, be like, no, I want to sing this song tonight because I'm
yeah,
hopeful. And it could be the same song
mm,
from a totally different place, and from night to night could maybe mean something different internally.
yeah.
And that's what I love about music too. But to talk
Yes,
for
yeah.
your point is that I need that sometimes, of somebody to hand me an album or an EP and be like, listen to this front to back. Because I would ride the bus with my Discman and I'd have the one album in it that had been in it for a month. So
Yeah,
you listen to that because that's what you have. So now
yeah.
you know that inside out and backwards. And it took me a long time to realize I don't do that as much anymore. And it wasn't a
Mm,
conscious thing, but we live in the age of the single now, as
totally.
as you've
Yeah.
said. And as a consumer and as an artist, that is doubly frustrating because there's
Totally.
so much out there and I want to hear all of it. I want to hear all of it. And sometimes it's like, okay, I have time for 45 seconds of this song. Okay, now I'm
Yeah.
going to sit, and like you find yourself in a playlist and just skipping through, and then you've got to
Yeah.
step back and take
Absolutely.
a breath. And it's like, what? No, just find an album, sit for, or an EP. I do love EPs. EPs, I feel like, are a great compromise between it because it's
They
still
are.
a
Yeah.
piece of something and a
Yeah.
collection of something. In a
In a kind of
bite-sized world.
manageable sort of format, isn't it? Yeah. A
Yeah.
manageable
You know,
for
it's like,
today's
I got
short
15
attention
minutes.
spans. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But it's an art both as a consumer and a producer. It's an art that I feel like we as humans used to be much more appreciative of and much
Mm,
better at taking a moment to sit and appreciate, say an album, some can be 30, some can be an hour. So something between 30 minutes to an hour of just
mm,
thank you for making this piece, and I'm going to sit and listen to it because I have albums from my formative years that kind of are like those friends. I haven't played them in 5 years or so. And the
yeah.
second
Yeah.
I pop it in and start, my brain is like, I remember all the words. I haven't heard this song in 15 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's something in there that it's like this music was such an intrinsic important part of my life at that period of time that I might
Mm,
not like consciously think about it or go back to it. But the second it's back in, it's like, oh, I can smell the air of
yeah.
when I opened the
Totally.
door to my house and it was springtime and I got in my car and
Absolutely.
rolled the windows down. I can smell it, you know. So
Absolutely.
that is something that has been like a thing this year that I've tried to be conscious of and be like, no,
Mm,
sit down, put on an album, don't put it on shuffle, listen to it from front to back.
front to back.
Try to do that with books too. I feel like I'd
Yeah.
read like articles or novellas or little chapters of things, but this year I sat down. I was like, when's the last time I sat and read a full
Full
book?
book. Yeah. You're totally right.
I was an English major also in college. Like that was my reading was my major, you know.
It was
So
that. That
like
was that was kind of your bag. Yeah.
yeah, you know. So it's trying trying to realize that my internal speed doesn't have to match the speed of everything going on around me. That's going to be as going as fast as it is
Yeah.
because that's the world we live in right now. But like that's not sustainable for an individual. So
I
like
think you're absolutely right.
take your time, realize and accept the fact that you are not going to see everything in this world or on this
Mm,
planet. And that is okay.
yeah. I think that.
Everyone
I
has
think
a
that's.
different walk.
I think that's a really good point because you do tend to. And I've found myself, thinking, oh well, your mind's darting everywhere. Well, what about that? Or there's that, and and it's like it's silly because you can't possibly get the most out of particular, let's say, keep it on music, but particular pieces of work because you're skipping through it. You can't possibly get anything out of it. You don't get that richness that sort of comes with it. I mean, I remember, like, it sounds there's a place for nostalgia, isn't there? I think back to when I was when I was a kid, and going to record stores, and this was in the early '80s, and so I'd be what, let's say, kind of 13 or 12, 13, something like that, and I was started going into record stores in my local town and seeing these, and it was the cover artwork that would do it for me because apart from hearing it perhaps on the radio, um, I would look at this artwork, and it was that drew me in, and it was just like, fuck, that's something that I want to be a part of because it looks so different to my life, but it looks really exciting. But I want to be part of it, but I don't know how to get there. It feels very remote, and but it was the artwork that dragged you in. I'd no idea what I was going to get home to listen to, and it was like these covers of kind of bands like Susie and the Banshees, and kind of like Adam and the Ants. These really and Killing Joke, just these sort of amazing artwork, and it just used to draw me in. And it felt like it was the whole package. It was the way that the stuff was, the music was put together. It was the packaging, the art, the inside sleeve, and then the physicality of it. It was just, yeah, something very different.
Yeah. Now I both love and understand the frustration of like, okay, and now I click and there's a song, you know,
Yeah,
because it's immediate and it's great because it's
in lots of ways,
my
yeah.
my friend in another state can message me a link and go, "Hey, I just found this band. They're cool." And in
Absolutely,
10 seconds,
absolutely.
I have it in my hand. So like
Yeah,
it's very cool. But I also, yeah, I remember going to Tower Records on a Friday with my dad
mm,
and like putting the headphones on and kind of listening through the catalog. And that's how you would have to kind of
yeah.
go and discover. I
It's
don't know.
funny that
I wish we could have a
the
foot in both.
I know. Yeah, you're right with that. I was thinking, talking about sort of early musical influences and my experiences of what I kind of like my dad was sort of classically trained, and so he used to listen to a lot of classical music, and I played the cello when I was a kid. I did really well with it. I passed all my exams. By the time I was 15, and but there was a massive but, and it goes back to what the sort of music that I was really listening to. And it's interesting the path that you take. You had the influences in your house, and then some of your own with the theatre. And I think to like when I was I completely rebelled against what my dad hated the sort of music that I listened to, like hated it. And when I gave up the cello, he was devastated and felt guilty about it for years. Well, that's a different story. But then I think so I took a different path to what he wanted. Um, and then I think to like my music teacher at school, his kids completely followed him in terms of into classical music. Just that was their thing. I just find it really interesting how I've tried to work out why like so that the very first song that the song that changed my life was "Judy Is a Punk" by the Ramones. That was the one that when I heard that, and I was just like, wow, nothing else was ever the same after that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well,
and
they're a big influence on us also.
yeah,
Just
for
because it's
sure.
New York, they're New York punk,
Yeah,
and like they sing, you hear their accents.
yeah.
That's there, and it's fast, and it's just loud, and it's fun, and it sounds. Some of their music can sound simple, but then you also go to play it, and it's like, oh, this is actually
This is pretty tricky.
deceptively difficult. Yeah,
Yeah,
So it's I love them.
and I couldn't stop looking at their record covers. The first album saying I could not get enough of that whole thing. And of course, that for me from England, there was the whole romance of New York as well that was involved. It was probably sort of far from the truth, but I had this
Well,
image
David
in
grew
my
up in
mind.
England.
Oh
Our
right, okay,
guitarist, yeah,
yeah,
so David grew up in England, and we chat about that a lot because like our collectively, the band is all over the place with their influences, like,
yeah,
is all over the place with their influences geographically, generationally, to kind of go back to your
mm,
point earlier, we live in
mm,
a time where I think there's the most generations, like, alive.
mm,
So in our band alone, my dad just turned 70 this year.
yeah,
So
wow,
he's a baby boom. And then
yeah,
we have David, who's Gen X, and then Mike and I
mm,
are both like in the millennial bucket. So
yeah,
we have a triple
true mix,
generational
yeah,
band. David grew up in England and loved like all of the punk and everything that was kind of going on there because that's where
yeah,
he was living, but loved
mm,
Blondie. They're a huge influence on us
yeah,
as well.
huge
And we've
influence,
seen
yeah,
them
yeah.
live a
Oh
handful of
wow,
times in New York fairly recently, and they are
mm,
still killing it. They're great. They're
absolutely,
absolutely great.
amazing,
And
yeah.
that's something for me is I see Blondie still killing it, and I'm like,
Yeah,
there's keep going. Just keep going because they're making new stuff. They were releasing new albums. They played this great show in Brooklyn that was packed. People were like, and that's what the music and everything does for me. Also, it's just like look at
do,
everyone together. Um, but it's
do you know? Sorry if I can interrupt. Blondie for me were one of those bands that who could write songs, and they would just sort of they seemed perfect for the time, for the era that they were being written in. Atomic is the for me is the obvious one. It was so just kind of evocative of kind of what was going on in the world at that sort of time, with the kind of the Cold War, and then there was the whole kind of like sort of disco sort of thing. It felt very, in a way, sort of dystopian. and it was just incredible. Same for, like Union City Blue, and then some of the songs on Auto American as well, which, w I know that some people didn't like that, but I thought that was an incredible album. I just thought it was just superb. They really could do that. They just had this knack of taking you to a sort of time and a place.
Yeah. Yep. Also, I this could be like a us being a New York thing, but for me, like "Eat to the Beat" is a lighter hearted that because it's like on the
Yeah,
corner,
yeah.
eat a pizza, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's us
Yes.
before a gig. Is we're literally outside like Rose's Pizza eating a dollar slice, and across the street
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Bowery
Yeah.
Electric,
Yeah.
So it's like that sets a. I know exactly where you are on the corner in New York, just going
Yeah.
eat to the beat, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's right.
And
I
that was the kind of the at the time, that sort of romantic thing that that image that you got, that from us sort of being in England, certainly that I got being in England, just sort of thinking about it, I was just like, oh my god, that's like an amazing world. I just wanted more of it. You know, it's
come to New York,
incredible.
man. We still
Oh
got
wow,
pizza.
you still got pizza, yeah. This is incredible. Yeah. So talking about the as far as sort of creating music, I mean, you do a lot. Obviously, a lot of the lyrics. When you're writing. I mean, how do you? Let's say things don't go according to plan. Like you either sort of have a block, or you're not particularly sort of happy with the lyrics that you're writing. How do you how do you respond to those sort of situations?
Um, well, our process collectively is very collaborative.
Yeah.
And before I say that, there are songs that like the final version that is on the EP or the album is
Mm.
maybe the seventh or eighth version of it
Yeah.
that we've kind of toyed through.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes we hit it right off the bat and it's like, oh yeah, this feels
Yeah.
good. Okay. And it just flows
It
and
just flows. Yeah.
yeah. And then other times we'll like pour over it or ultimately the consensus is like there are two main methods that we write and one will start off as like a Mike song and one will start off as like a David song and that's
Mm.
just because they each have their guitar that they're kind of noodling with so they'll come in with like either
Mm.
the bones of something
Mm.
of like hey here's the kind of grounding that I feel and maybe some lyrics that they've started with. Mike will sometimes have a melody kind of in mind and maybe some skeleton lyrics with like, I'm not sure what to say
Mm.
here, or maybe bridge that. And
Mm.
I'll
Mm.
review everything. And ultimately
Yeah.
I edit it as like, I don't feel like I want to say that, or I would say that this way. Sometimes there are full sections that I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this part and just write what I would put
Mm.
there because we need a verse here that's missing. So it starts off very like collaborative and Franken song
Mm.
almost where it's like
Yeah.
and then my dad will come in and just will be like, Bill, we need a blah do do ba da da and he's like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Like,
You sort of
yes.
build his beats. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he grew up playing all styles. Like he's played
Mm.
jazz, he's played disco,
Mm.
he was in a punk rock band in the 80s called the Peter Chelsea Band before my time. That when we started playing together, he was like, this feels like Peter Chelsea. All right, but he was back in, but he'll throw in and you'll see him switch his positioning and he'll throw in some jazz shit like in the middle
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we'll flip it around and go back to like his other stuff. So he's been playing drums for over 60 years. So
Mm.
figure he's had that many genres and has been in that many cover bands or party bands or anything like that, where
Mm.
he's been a rolling snowball of all the different techniques.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
he brings all of that to
Mm.
Bad Mary, which is a quote unquote like punk band, but you'll hear his
Mm.
drums and it's like, that's a swing. Where did that
Where did
come
that come
in?
from? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Lyrically, um, I I was in English. I was an English and theater major in college.
Mm.
So I took like playwriting classes, and I loved like I would write sketches for. Um, we would run like a night show, like an open mic almost that had like sketches in between. I wrote my senior year. I wrote a bunch of those.
Mm.
So I was always more familiar with writing dialogue, I think, first. So when
Mm.
it started to do songwriting, and I'd done musical theater, I'd done so many musicals because that was part of the school program, and my favorites were the rock musicals.
Mm.
Um, so I would kind of take what I learned in that, but sometimes the one I point back to that is a different process than every other song is our song Trouble.
Mm.
that started at my dad's house, and my dad was playing bass. Mike was on guitar, and I was kind of humming a vocal line along to it.
Mm.
And that song, I didn't have lyrics for it until the car ride to the studio. It was at a
Right.
point where like they'd been
Wow.
swimming in my head, and I never wrote anything down, but I had a couple of like, okay, here's the first line, and I maybe have the first verse, and it was kind of like, okay, well, you got to pull the trigger because we're literally driving there to record it now.
Wow.
And I wrote them all down in the car on the way
Wow.
there. So sometimes it happens like that. David has that, our song The Itch. He was at a stoplight and took out his phone, and I think did like a I got an itch that I just can't, and then put it down and like kept going. So like
Incredible. Yeah.
if it hits, it hits. And like the biggest thing I can say is record it. I have so many voice memos that maybe I haven't gone back to, but I have a
Yeah.
bunch that I did. And in that moment, you might get an idea in the shower. You might get an idea. Don't text and drive, but like while you're driving, just do like the stoplight, do the
Yeah.
stoplight trick. Like don't text and drive. But ultimately, there have been songs that, one of which we're putting on Betterer Days, which is the EP coming out later this year,
Yeah.
later this season, that had a full verse in it, extra verse
Mm.
before we recorded the first, like our original and the version that we've been playing,
Mm.
because we took it out. We're like, this song is too long. I would rather it end a little early and you want to
Yeah.
restart it from the beginning than it'd be like, okay, this song just dragged on. I don't want to hear it ever again. So
Yeah.
we took full sections out. Um, but yeah, no, our process in general is very collaborative, and we're very honest with each other. So if it's like,
Mm.
hey, that lyric isn't hitting, or like that line doesn't work, like we'll
Yeah. Yeah.
spitball and audibly say it. I forget which song. I don't think it was there. There was iRobot. It was our song iRobot
Mm.
that was
Mm.
on the Return of Space Girl. That I think we had been working on that song since before the Return of Space Girl. And the song that is on the album, that's the one that is like the 7th version of it, because David just keeps
Right.
scrapping it. He was like, "It's not working," and then he come back with like a different rhythm. He's like, "This isn't working," and
Funny, isn't it?
the two different ways the vocal line happens are David is, if you hear David singing on a stream, we live stream a lot, and it has
Mm.
happened when he hasn't noticed, but he's very singing shy. He does not like to sing in front of people, does
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
his voice, but will give me like his sheet of lyrics, and will be like, here's the rhythm I have, and be like da 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 ba 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 da ba, and I'll have to try to like match his rhythm and have full reign with whatever the melody is doing. So he's like, as
Mm.
long as the
Mm.
melody fits over this instrumentation, this is just the rhythm I kind of want. And sometimes I'll come back after like a couple weeks of working on it, and I'll be like, I've already changed it. I hope it's okay, but this didn't fit here for me. So I changed it to ba 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 da 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 da. And then he'll be like, I really liked it better. So like we'll go back and forth on trying to like layer how it rhythmically fits over the arrangement.
Mm.
But sometimes it's just like we'll try it once and yeah, that clicked. So
And then it
it's
just sort of clicks. Yeah. With it,
all over the place.
with the the kind of like Better Days that's coming out later this year. I mean, with the kind of reworkings, let's sort of call them. I mean, does that sort of fit into like an idea of you looking back at your the kind of like the first record that you made, and or looking back through your catalog and thinking, okay, these are kind of like living pieces of work that we've done, and we're kind of updating it. This is how we feel about them now. So there's kind of a, okay, we'll take it there. That's what it meant then. This is now what it means to us now.
Yeah. That so Better Days, and we've talked about this recently and the kind of why we wanted to do it. Better Days was put together when, for the four of us, I feel like our lives were in a bit of a different place.
Mm. Mm.
And the song Better Days means so much different to me now than it did then. And I
Then it
think
did
10
then.
years from
Yeah.
now will continue to mean something different. And we wrote those lyrics in, I'm listening to it now. And that one, we just did vocals. David sent us the first mix of that one this morning. So that, for me, the lyrics are kind of evergreen. We don't mention
Mm.
anything too time specific, where
Yeah.
like it can
It
be
can
whatever
date a
time you're
song.
in,
Yeah.
whatever day you're in.
Yeah.
And the album, when we first put it together, Mike and I had really just finished college and was kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, to throw back to Blink 182, Nobody Likes You When You're 23. That's the
Mm,
stage of life that like we were kind of in, and
mm,
figuring out, okay, what do we want to do professionally, artistically? Like, I had just graduated a theater program. So it was, do I go and pursue acting? Do I really like that? And I did a couple of commercial jobs and things. And I found that it brought me such anxiety of like having to stay, no, this is your script and da da da, and like film. And I
mm,
was like, I don't think I can do this as a career and be happy every day of my life.
mm.
And I went more into music after that. I realized like film is very different from stage, is very different from music.
Mm,
And I think I was also still figuring out myself and my identity as a performer outside of something that had already been created.
I
um
understand. Yeah.
to the point where, like, in theater or doing musical theater, you are performing a piece that people have seen maybe hundreds of times already. They're expecting to see a certain thing. They already know the story. 100 people have played that part before you, so you have a baseline of the character that exists. You have an audio recording of cast recordings that already exist that you're trying to emulate.
Yeah.
When you're writing something original, you have the opportunity and the time and space to be like, what do I sound like without all these things prior telling me this is what the song is,
Got you.
you
Yeah.
know? So when we recorded Better Days, that was our first as a
Mm,
band, when it was still kind of like at a hobby level of, hey, we're doing this for fun. We were
yeah.
playing cover shows. This was a way for me to like kind of connect more with my dad after like being through school and moving around a bit. And Mike and I
Yeah.
were dating, but we were at a totally different place of life. And when we recorded that album, we did it much like we do now in David's basement, but we didn't know what we did then. We didn't have the setup we did then. We just
Yeah.
kind of put a microphone to the thing and we're like, you know what? We got some time. Let's put something together and see
Yeah.
what happens. And the way that those songs got embraced when we put them out was like kind of overwhelming for us, and gave us this like, oh no, there is something to this. And this was a lot of fun. And this is a piece that um, the band has continued to grow from. So that was
Mm,
like kind of, I think, the seed for us doing production ourselves,
mm,
us feeling okay with kind of moving forward and creating stuff ourselves. And that was the catalyst for us really being like DIY.
mm, mm.
And from there, we had gone and worked with some studios. We worked with a producer by the name of Matt Storm. We bring him up all the time. He was excellent. If you listen
Mm,
to Killing Dinosaurs or We Could Have Saved the World, he
mm,
worked on those.
mm.
And we learned kind of a lot of discipline from those experiences, I think, and like pre-production and like, oh, these are the important things to consider when
Yeah.
putting music together. But when you listen to Better Days, you can tell like it's a homebrew,
Homebrew album.
album.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there are so many of those songs that to this day we play in our sets.
Yeah.
And it just felt right for us at this point with like, okay, now that we put out Trash and Glamour, we recorded that ourselves. It was received very well, and like
Yeah.
so it
Absolutely.
was then that thank you. And we still kind of can't
It's fabulous.
uh
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
fathom it, and they're just continuously excited about it, because it's very much like I describe us as we're a little engine that could, we're kind of in David's studio in his house still. That's where we've always been. It's gotten a little
Yeah.
better like a lot better over the years.
Mm,
And it feels like a studio, whereas when we first like started streaming, we had an iPhone hanging from the ceiling and just hit go
yeah.
and we're like, let's see what happens. So now it's like, no, here's the board and we have a mix. And um so this real retreatment on the six that have stood the test of time with us,
Mm,
I think, is something I've always wanted, because I'm like, there are some of these songs like we just put out Forget About It. We play that every show. We like get in trouble
mm.
if we don't play that
If you
song.
don't
And we
play it.
really,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like we want to give it the treatment that it deserves. And also
Mm,
like they've grown. Like some of I've purposely not listened to Better Days
mm.
when we've worked on Better Days, because the way we
Interesting.
play
Yeah.
them live, I don't want to do the musical theater thing where I fall back on the first recording and try to emulate that. That's not what we're
Yeah.
trying to do. We're trying to give it the new life that
It's a new life. It's almost like purer, isn't it? It's like the purity of doing it without the backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
But I'm very excited for Better Days to come out, especially after having gone through a pandemic, having gone
Yeah,
through the loss of a parent, having gone through like a whole lot of other parts and aspects of life that I hadn't
yeah.
experienced at maybe 23. It gives it a different weight.
I mean, given what you've been through, what you've experienced, in the sort of personally in the last sort of few years, and also the way that your music, um, let's call it let's call it career, but it's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
I know.
Your sort of your music life. I mean, do you feel that you can you can take the risks that you want? Do you feel like this is do you feel in any way like it's taking risks in with what you're doing? Are you a risk taker? Yeah.
I want to say, yeah, it took a while, I think, to get to this point mentally, but I am at a point now where, like, if we release something and the first comment is, "Ew, this is garbage. I hate it. She can't sing." I don't care.
Mm,
I don't care anymore. And I think when I was younger, when we were first starting out, and that's the first thing anybody will say is like, "Don't read the comments."
yeah,
You
yeah.
kind of, I mean, it's impossible not to read the
It's impossible
comments.
not to. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there will, and this is the biggest advice I can give to anybody pursuing anything creatively, there will always be that person in the comments telling you that. And when
Mm,
you get to the point where you do not care about that anymore, that's when you are really free to create whatever you want.
absolutely. Yeah,
Um, and I feel like I'm finally at that point where I can kind of laugh at it and be
that's
like,
great.
you don't have to like it. That's fine. There's stuff that I know I don't like, but that's just
Yeah.
that's not for
Do you
me.
know,
That doesn't mean it's bad.
it's funny. It's funny. I remember like one of the. I think it was maybe the fifth episode that I did of this podcast, fourth or fifth, and it was with a guy called Dave Haslam, and he's a DJ. He was a DJ at if you remember the famous Hacienda Club in Manchester, but with the Acid House, and he was one of the DJs there. And in the early '80s, he used to produce a kind of DIY fanzine called Debris, and he used to go around, distributing it, putting it in, various, kind of bars and clubs and stuff like that. And he said he went into one of the clubs where he'd put it. He went in at night. And he went into I think he sort of went into the toilets or something, and it just sort of scrawled on the wall. It just said, "Debris is shit," and he just thought, do you know what? You've made it.
Yeah.
He was just kind of like he said
Yeah.
he was pleased. He said somebody has taken the trouble to write that. He said,
Yep.
"I'm all right. I'm happy with that."
As wild as that sounds, that's like,
I
yep,
thought that's just a kind of great way to look at it. So
yep.
for you now, what does sort of kind of success look like for you? Either kind of musically or in your life. I don't know if it's possible to sort of bring them together, but what does success look like for you?
Well, right now, the things we're just most excited about right now is that the songs that we're putting out and the reviews we've gotten back. We've been playing music, and this is kind of like a 10th anniversary of this album. So
Mm,
we've been going for a bit, and in the last couple of years, we've kind of gotten better about pushing it out there farther than our local scene. I think
yeah,
2019, that was our first trip to Japan, and that was the first, I think, flip switch of like,
incredible.
okay, no, this can be a lot bigger if we allow ourselves to step through those doors. So
Yeah.
what we learned from that, and the very quick story of that is we had started getting played on Sirius on Rodney Bingenheimer's show,
Mm,
which,
mm.
thank you, Rodney, for still playing our music. We love you. But we had started submitting to that, and he had spun a couple of songs that we put out, and for us at that time, and honestly it still is amazing whenever we see that we're on his track list, but that
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
the first real, like, oh shoot, okay, now we're on this show, this is a legit, this is this is real. That was like our first
Mm.
step out of like our kind of comfort zone or the bubble
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
comfortable being in.
Mm,
And from that, we were in. So my mom lived in Florida. She worked at Disney World.
mm,
Mike and I would
mm.
go there a bunch to visit her. So we often found ourselves in the happiest place on earth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we were there when Mike is looking at his phone. I think he was like waiting for me to come out of the bathroom or something. And like he's looking at
Mm,
his phone and sees, we're getting played in Japan. Who is this person playing us in Japan? And we found out it was a legitimate DJ over there,
mm,
Mike Rogers.
mm,
Hi, Mike.
mm,
And what we learned was like, send the email, make the phone call. The
mm.
worst thing that can happen is they either don't answer or it just, but don't
Yeah,
be afraid to take that next step. And
take that
that
up.
next step
Yeah,
turned
absolutely.
into him introducing us to April, who then helped us get over there. And then boom, first international tour. Oh my God. We followed
That's
it up with
incredible.
the
Yeah.
Return of Space Girl album, which we had a whole 2020 planned. So kind of refiguring out, okay, how do we take this momentum that we had? We had a local residency that our first show happened
Mm,
February 15th, I think, had
mm.
almost like 200 people there. We had a second show in that residency planned for March 13th, 2020, which is the day the world closed. So we had this up, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, and not just us, so it's not like, oh world, you did not just us, it happened to everybody.
Mm, mm.
So it's how do we reshift and not give up from that when it's so easy to be like, okay, well that's our sign, you
Yeah.
know. So for us now that those doors kind of opened as a, here's what a possibility, here's what can happen,
Mm.
that kind of took us and has kept moving us
And that
forward.
stays with you. That you keep that in your mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
so success to me is a continuation of that, but it's really just not getting discouraged. As long as you kind of like, there are going to be people out there that say no. There are going to be people that don't play your music. There are going to be gigs
Yeah,
that you don't get. There are going to be more gigs that you don't get than you do get.
yeah,
Success is keeping going and being really grateful for the ones that you do get, because those things that you get then open the door to the next thing. The things that you
yeah.
don't get, that's the door that you're not supposed to go through.
Absolutely.
um so
Yeah,
it's just to then go back to the feedback we're getting now, that whole long
yeah,
tangent of, well, we've been playing for 10 years and then that started in 2019. The reviews we're getting back now from Just Forget About It, which is one of our first songs we ever wrote,
yeah,
first
yeah,
songs we
yeah.
ever started playing, is it seems like people are getting it.
I love
And
it.
that's the biggest success for me, is that like when people explain what they hear and the vibe they get, we're like, that's
Mm,
it. That's
yeah,
it. They get it. Thank God. Okay. So, so it's just like,
yeah,
it feels like it's clicking. Um, and it's just to kind of see where that goes. I would love to go back to Japan.
mm,
That's been my favorite place.
amazing.
Every time we go, I just feel very, very grounded. I love that. And just,
Yeah,
it's awesome. I would love to kind of go. We've been getting asked a lot more recently, like, are you coming to the UK?
mm,
I would love to go there. Like, we kind of just want to, anywhere that gets it, that is like,
yeah,
yes, we embrace it. They're like, yes. So
yeah,
we've just been very excited that the radio has been embracing it. We've been, I'm speaking to you, which is
yeah,
awesome. So like stuff like this for me is like just all part of it, of getting to meet new
yeah.
incredible people that share this kind of same fire.
Yeah. No, totally agree. I completely agree. So I think the re-releases, sometimes there's a time and a place, or the reworks, I should say. There's a time and a place, and you sort of go from the instinct that it kind of feels right to you, and then with the momentum that you build, then just something sort of connects and it starts to resonate and sort of grow. It's these hard to intangibles that are hard to sometimes quantify. It just happens. It just works, And
Yeah.
I do believe it's that sort of instinct. And you're right. Again, I'm talking about that. The right word is sort of spirituality, but almost that if it's not meant to be, if that door doesn't open, fine. It won't open. Something else will come to replace it, and that's perhaps the path that you will kind of suit you the best. And you just know through your instinct, I think, what's going to work.
Yeah.
But you have some amazing opportunities. I really do think it. Some amazing stuff to you have the the desire, and that's what success looks like for you, and the desire to do it and make it happen, and things are starting to happen. I'm sure they will.
What's been thank you for that. Um, what's been really really fun, and this started a lot more through COVID as a necessity, but has kind of kept going afterwards because it ended up being just a really great way to connect. Is we live stream a lot,
Yeah,
and we've been live streaming. Kind of like I said, like we were like, okay, let's put a pole on the ceiling and put that phone in.
yeah.
We did direct to Facebook for years, I think, before it was really like I don't want to say like before it was a thing, because it was
Mm,
definitely a thing, but like we did
mm,
it a lot, and that was more to get ourselves more confident with just putting ourselves out there and like being ourselves on stage. Because when you
yeah,
come to see us, like we're very much just us kind of like bantering and bullshitting back and forth, like with ourselves
yeah.
and the crowd. Like we
And the
have
crowd, yeah,
conversations with the audience. It turns into kind of a big group thing. And that's when the streaming started, was I think to help, for me anyway, help me get out of my shell.
yeah, yeah.
Because I will like overthink about, oh, should I say that? I don't know. But the second the camera goes on, for some reason, all of that quiets. Like I go on stage, or I have I don't know what it is, but like a switch flips and I
Like a
feel,
persona or something that's for your stage.
yes, but it's almost reversed in a
Mm,
weird way. Like I feel more 100% okay to be myself. So
yeah,
it's
okay.
almost opposite for
I
me.
get you. Yeah,
And
I
I'll
get it.
have people say like, "Oh, I love your stage persona." And I'm like, "Thank you," because in my head that's my space to let
That's
all of
you.
it out. That's me. Yeah. So I find
I
in my
get you.
day-to-day life, I'm like, "No, I have to sit in this chair and not like
Mm,
be, I have to contain my energy. I have to kind of
I get you.
keep it in here." But the second it's like, no, we've turned the camera on, or no, the I'm out on stage, that goes away, because that's the energy we're all here for. And I kind of like allow myself more to just like,
Yeah.
we're off. So that's how it's really therapeutic for me. And when we play
Mm,
more, I'll step off stage and have this just like whew, this energy of,
yeah,
I just got to let it all out, and everybody was here for it, and we all feel great now, because it's the room after our shows is just a lot of fun. um but so we'd been streaming for a bit, and then COVID kept everybody in their house, and Mike and
mm,
I, luckily reside together, but we
mm,
couldn't get together with the rest of the band. So we took over and
mm,
did a whole bunch of like acoustic stuff. Snowball, now years later, we have a weekly live stream on Twitch. We have the full band plugged in, and that's been the best way to connect with people from everywhere. So at any given time in our little chat
absolutely.
box, we have people from Argentina, people from Japan, people from New York or Texas or like
Mm,
Philly or whatever, all in the same
amazing.
little chat, just kind of back and forth. So as much as I complain about oh, things are so quick and there's just so much in social media and da, 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 like it's, on the flip side, has been so amazing. So that's all part of that balance of things cannot be all happy and all sad at the same time. Things cannot
Yeah,
be all good and all bad at the same, like there's a flip side to that new way that we're connecting, that happened out of
yeah,
necessity, especially for us, because we're like, okay, the choices are stop or keep going in this very different, modern, scary way.
yeah,
Um, because it is different. And I will say, like, the first
yeah,
show back after just streaming for a year and a half. So it took so long to get used to, okay, now I'm in a room and I'm talking to everybody and I can hear you and see your face and you're responding to me right here,
yeah,
to, okay, now I'm looking at a screen and I can read your comments, but I can't see you. So maybe there's a lag between, hey, how you
yeah,
doing? Okay, it takes 2 minutes for comments to come through. So now I've just got to talk
yeah,
with no response, which it took a while to get used to. But now is kind of fun because you learn a different rhythm of it, and it's just a
absolutely.
different way to engage. that first show back where we stepped out on stage and I looked at a room again, that was almost okay, now we need to relearn how to do this because this is a
Yeah,
whole other, and I feel like everyone did to a point where it's like, okay,
absolutely. I completely agree.
how do I human again? How do I social again?
Yeah.
How does
I
um
think I think you're absolutely right. I think it also the for the certainly like for me when I first went back going to a gig. No, I can't remember which one it was, but it took me a while to go back to it. So I think for the for the crowd as well, for your fans, it's a weird experience as well, all round. From going to like you say, this kind of like okay, a live stream on my computer watching a band play live. Okay, that's a bit weird. Then you get used to that. That then becomes the norm, and then you have to go back to the first norm of going to a live. It's really like when you're feeling it, the crowd's feeling it,
yeah.
all the venue people are feeling it as well. It's just like, whoa, this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's a
And
weird kind of reaction.
I feel like now the last couple that we've played, and especially in New York now, I am feeling like people are like ready, you
Mm,
know. So
mm,
we've played a handful at like some of the clubs, and there are so many. I've seen this a lot. Like the stadium tours of these big artists are great and so much fun, but they're like almost pricing their audience out of being able to
absolutely. Yeah.
attend them.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I will say to that, because I hear this too, is oh, there's no good new music, or there's a, so everybody thinks like that's the only thing that's out there.
Yeah.
But as a response to that now, and I'm hearing more now, the best shows you will ever see are in like the smaller clubs in New York
Absolutely.
City or in all that. And I really, the last couple ones that we have played and seeing the scene kind of come back, there is something bubbling there, and people are very
Mm,
hungry for that again. And it's been very
agree.
uh cool to see it kind of rebuild, and also to see like the younger generations that didn't get to experience it
Mm,
initially be like, no, we're here for it now. Now it's our
absolutely.
turn too. So I really do believe that that is coming back.
I agree. I agree. I think it's probably the same in New York as it's been in many places across America as it's been in the UK. With those sort of smaller venues closing, and but then as some close, others open up, and there's almost like a kind of
Yeah,
rebirth. It's been that's not to detract from how difficult it's been, for many of the venues, but going back to this idea of adaptability and sort of resilience, and if the creativity, the desire to create, from both the artists and from people who put on shows is still there, and it never dies. It's almost like this sort of you know inbuilt. Yeah, we're going to create as some things die away, other things will happen, and I think that you're right. What you're seeing is probably is a response to these huge Live Nation, massive, overpriced, huge, things where you see all you're watching is something on a screen because you're too far away. Get
yeah,
back to that kind of like small club, the grassroots stuff. That's where it happens. That's where a lot of the you know your kind of heroes from way back, the Who, Queen, whoever started, in those sort of
the
venues.
Ramones,
The Ramones,
the Ramones.
exactly. That's where it happens. That's where it happens.
You know, even like Blondie, CBGB,
Yeah.
that it's there. There's a place by us called Mr. Beery's that has
Mm,
been a local original spot for over 30 years, and like we've all lovingly dubbed it. It's like, no, that's the CBGBs of Long Island,
mm,
and like that's where we all kind of get together and test out new music,
yeah.
like play songs for the first time. And in those kind of clubs, that's where you will hear a song for the first time that's ever
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
so it's if you're into music, or if you're like, oh, I don't know what's good, and you check out what's happening at the smaller clubs in your area, because I guarantee you one of those
Yeah.
bands on that bill somewhere is going to be one of those that takes off, and you can say like, I was at their show when there were like 40 people in the audience. Like that really
Absolutely.
happens, and that's
Yeah.
happening every day. And there are such killer bands that I've seen on those bills that it's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing next? Where are you going next? This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I met you in this space, you
Yeah.
know?
And that's an
Um,
incredible thing to be able to say that you were you did that you were you saw them at that sort of. I mean, everybody wants that. That's the stuff of dreams, isn't it?
Yeah, Mike. This is one of Mike's stories, but I love it. He was at the Bowery Electric, and Green Day was playing as the Foxborough Hot Tubs.
Oh yeah.
So if you've ever been to Bowery Electric, it's a great venue, but maybe I think they let 100 people in.
Yeah.
So if you are seeing Green Day at a venue where they let 100 people in, and the thing goes, Joan Jett was standing on the level above him and like spilled her drink on him. He looks up and it's Joan Jett, and it's just like, what is that? And this was like before the band, like he was like number 99 in line, and they like just like, so like there are things like that. Like look for, because the bands that have done the stadium tours and everything, there is no other feeling like that room.
Yeah, absolutely right.
You know,
absolutely
even
right.
as a performer, like that's
that energy
where it starts. That's where it is. And like, yeah, I want to get beer poured on me, and like,
yes.
You know? It's like, oh, even if it's like it's an accidental spill, like it's whatever. But like that's that gritty, like you can feel the walls sweat kind of vibe.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's something very beautiful about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, Amanda, it's been an honor. I could have talked to you all night. There's loads of stuff we could have carried on talking about, but I guess we'd better stop here. But it's been an honor. Thanks so much for taking the time out.
Thank you so much. Enjoy everything.